Hello, welcome to another installment in my series on how to live an unfulfilling life. Today, we're going to be fixing rust again. Before we dig in, let's take a quick walk around this pristine one owner barn find and show you what we're up against. All looking very good under here. Nothing but good news. So I'm sure a lot of you would like to know where's the best place to start with a project like this. And I can tell you from my experience, the best thing to do is just to dive in with zero plan and just go after it. If you start thinking about things, you're going to realize what a horrible mistake you've made, and nothing will ever get done. We're going to start working on these rocker panels here. That seems like a logical place to start. We'll get out the grinder and we'll start cutting off some of this garbage here and see what we've got left. And I guess if it folds in half on us, then we'll know that we're in way over our heads and it's time to give up. So there's a couple different ways we can tackle the rust on this inner panel here. First would be to just fabricate a whole new inner panel. If we were doing a Pebble Beach restoration, that's what we would do. But we do have a budget to adhere to here, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense to get too carried away with the inner structure of this. We do want to make it solid and we do want to make it safe. Now, in theory, it would be easier just to replace the whole thing, but the problem is it comes up here and then it folds off that way, and it ties into all the floor and everything else. So it's actually quite a big job to cut all of this out. A large majority of it is still solid. So the other option would be we could make a new seam and we could just cut it basically up to here and then plug weld it to here. And that would be another thing we could do. But again, we're still into a bit of fabrication and what have you there. And with the price of steel now, that would be like a $7,000 piece of metal to replace this whole thing. So I've decided what I'm going to do is keep things as simple as possible. It's going to involve more welding, but I think we'll still be able to shave a little bit of time off this. So I'm just going to only replace what needs to be replaced. There's no sense in getting rid of good metal. So basically I'm just going to splice it all through here, up to here, and through here, treat all this surface rust here, and then come up here and do a little piece here. And I think that'll be solid. It's a bit of a jigsaw puzzle of patches, but I think it'll work out okay for us. Okay, I'm going to start building the rocker panels for this. So I've got four sections of 18 gauge sheet metal cut out here, and now I'm only building two rocker panels, but what I'm going to do is because these rocker panels are over 5 feet long, it's going to be quite difficult to shape a 5-foot long section. So what I'm going to do is build a front and a half section, weld them together in the middle, and then weld them on the van. So it just makes things a lot more manageable, and doing a seam here is takes barely any time at all. Less time than it would be to try battling with a 5-foot long section. So that's why we've got 4 pieces cut out here. But show you the plan here is going to be to splice it in right at this body line here. And obviously on this side we've got some other stuff to deal with, but we'll get to that eventually. I just wanted to mention here, even though all of this is obviously garbage all the way up through here, it's really tempting to just go ahead and cut all of that out. But whenever I'm doing major rust repair on something like this, I basically replace one section at a time and leave as much intact as I can, because even though this is garbage, this is all valuable information. We've got our length here from front to back still. We know how this curves, and we can even take, there's even enough left here where we could figure out what curve we need for the bottom. So as soon as all this is gone, then we have no information. We have no idea, where it ends, what it's supposed to look like. All that information is gone. And you can have, I don't care if you have $100,000 worth of equipment, or you have a car where you can buy all the panels for. It doesn't matter. Once this information is gone, you have nothing to go off of. There's no reference point or anything. So information is more valuable than anything else when you're doing this. I remember a few years ago I had to do a bunch of work on a Mustang, and basically everything except the roof was getting replaced. But previously someone had cut the entire car apart with an air chisel, thrown away every single original panel. I mean, all the original stuff was all garbage, but it was still there. Everything got cut away with an air chisel. The frame rails, floor, quarter panels, everything. All that was left was basically a roof and a firewall. And I had to work on the car, and all I got was a stack of brand new panels and a Mustang roof. And it took forever to try and actually reassemble that into something, because the aftermarket panels are never the same as the original, and you have nothing to go off of. And with the Mustangs, there was so much variation from the factory. You can't even get frame measurements online anywhere for them. So I don't know how many hours I had into just sheet metal screwing the whole assembly together, measuring it, trying to move things around a quarter of an inch at a time until the whole car was square. So that's kind of a mistake. Just I see a lot of people make, and it's easy to get overwhelmed by this. It can kind of be frustrating and counterproductive working around all this stuff and leaving it here. It is, I think, better to leave as much of it as you can and just replace it little by little. So that's my rant on that. Let's start building a rocker panel, or two rocker panels, I guess. I'm also leaving one side intact for reference. You notice I already had to cut the other rocker panel off and started rebuilding the inner, but I still have this side as my reference point, so I can go back and forth between the two. What I'll probably do is get the rocker panel welded on the other side, and then I'll come back here. I'll have to fill that hole, and there's a big dent there I've got to get out, and then we'll put the rocker panel on this side, and we'll just keep switching back and forth. My plan here is to, because we basically need the same amount of rest repair on each side, I'm going to build both sides at once. That way I can remember how I did it, and I can make sure they're both similar or the same from side to side. It sounds stupid, but what happens is when I'm doing this stuff, if I do one side at a time and build everything at once, by the time I get to this other side, I'll forget how I made the other panel, and then it's a whole learning curve over again, so it takes twice as long. So we'll try to avoid some of that. I actually did one of these vans last year and built basically all this stuff, and now I've totally forgotten how I did a lot of it. So now I have to learn all over again, and part of the reason for doing this video series is so that I can actually remember what I did if I ever have the misfortune of working on one of these again. So we're trying to do some damage control this time and plan ahead. Okay, so I broke the edge of all my rocker panel pieces, and this edge here is eventually going to become the bottom flange where it's spot welded to the inner rocker. Now this is kind of going backwards from how you'd normally build a panel, because normally you'd want to put your shape into it first and then worry about all these edges at the end. But in this case, these rocker panels don't actually have any crown from front to back. They are basically totally flat, but they have form from front to back. So this is all going to end up being curved. It's going to have a pretty substantial radius in it. So because I'm not actually going to be putting any crown into it, I'm just putting form into it. I'm going to start here, and then from there I'm going to move on, and now we're going to start putting that curve into these from front to back. So hold on, and I'll show you in a second here what I've got planned. Okay, so I built this contraption for the last rocker panels that I did. What I've got here is a big chunk of pipe, and I tack welded the rocker panel piece onto it. So it's like so. And now I'm gonna use this to get the initial bend. So what I've got here is a couple brackets welded onto it, and I'm going to bolt it down to my workbench, and then I'll fold this over. This is pretty hokey, but it does work. My problem is I bought a whole bunch of cars and instead of tools, so I got to kind of get creative with this type of thing. Just grab it here. Okay, we got all our pieces curved now, and I'd like to pretend that we're almost done, but unfortunately that was the easy part. Because got curve here, but there is actually still quite a bit more curve into these panels. This was just to get the initial curve. So next step's going to be a little bit more challenging here. All right, now I'm going to use the English wheel to put the rest of the curve in that panel there. So on my last video, I mentioned this rubber band here. This is just an old inner tube. And what I've done is I've put it over top of the upper wheel. And what that allows me to do is to put form into the panel without actually stretching the metal. Try wheeling this without that upper rubber band there. It's going to stretch the metal, and as we're stretching the metal, it's going to want to curve up in the middle, and that's not what we want, because from front to back we're flat. We just want the actual radius to go into it. So that's what this is going to allow us to do. Now you can see here I've already got one panel formed. So here's a unformed panel. All we did was put that roll into it, but you can see just how far it has to curve around compared to this panel that we just finished. So we're going to be doing all of that with the English wheel. Now technically you could also put this in with the English wheel, but I find that using that contraption just speeds up the process a bit, because to put this in with the wheel, you're going to be at it for a while. So now what we're going to do is we're going to wheel this whole area here and until it has the same curve as this. Okay, I got all these panels formed here now. So the next step is there's a body line that goes all the way through here. So for that, we're just gonna put it in the brake and fold it, put a slight angle on it, and that'll be good enough. Well, what have we been up to since our last update? We got all the body lines put in here with the brake, and then this bottom edge also has a lip that folds over like so. So we put that in. And you'll notice I had everything kind of long before, so I got that all trimmed up. It's just easier to break everything when the edge is longer. So we also trimmed this back. This is about an inch here. So that's all looking mediocre, as it should. Then what I did is I set the rocker panels on the van itself, and I established where my front and my back is going to be. And I established where the wheel opening is going to be, and then I marked that out. So on the front, we already have enough information here where I was able to just trace out this and get an idea of what it needed to be. But at the back here, there really wasn't a whole lot to go off of, but that doesn't mean all hope was lost, because we still had this line here, which we know. So this was a reference point, and this was our reference point. So from here to here, we were able to get a pretty accurate shape to this wheel opening of what it probably should be. And now when I put the rocker panel on like so, when we hold the rocker panel up here, see I cut this out, and then all of this is going to be built as this unit. So this just makes things a little bit easier. I could also have, put this in, but it was easier to put this in the brake and make this body line, and then put this in as part of this. So just to make my life easier, I trimmed this out, and this flares out here. So I'm going to make all of this. I'm going to make all of this as one panel, and this will be a separate panel, and then I'll splice it in here, and that's going to just make things simpler, because this body line here is totally straight otherwise from front to back. So I was able to just put that in using the brake, which saves a bunch of time. And then this, I've got a plan for building this, and it'll be easier to put all these curves in here with this panel as one unit rather than trying to hammer it into here. So with this stuff, it's really easy to kind of get overwhelmed. So when I do this, I try to break everything up into its own shape. You know, all this is just a series of shapes. So I always look at it as how I can kind of break that down into something that's manageable to build. You know, in theory, we could have built this whole rocker panel and this all as one unit, but the more you have going on, the more complicated the panel is and the more time it takes to build. Same deal at the front here, flares out, so I just notched out the rocker panel piece. I'll build all this as one unit and it'll just make my life a little bit easier, and at this stage I need all the help I can get. So when I marked my line, I left about 3/4 of an inch on here, and that's going to fold over and it's going to become the wheel lip, and then this will spot weld to the inner piece. So in order to do that, I'm going to have to fold all of this to 90 degrees, and then I'm going to have to do a whole bunch of shrinking again, because as I fold this, it's going to flatten out this rocker panel here, and I'll have to put shrink into here to recurve it. I'm just going to use my all-16ths to tip this flange over, and then I'll finish the rest of it off with hammer and dolly. No need to get fancy here. Good, fold it over. And you can see it's now flattened out here. That means we have to do a whole bunch of shrinking in this area. So we're going to use our shrinker, and we're going to shrink that edge until it has the right curve in it again. So that's kind of what we're going for. Got our curve back into it. Now I know it's kind of tempting to want to fold this edge over first and then shrink it before you form the rest of the panel in the English wheel. But it's better to save this kind of stuff for last and run the wheel right off the end of the panel. Because if you fold this edge and shrink it first, it's only going to really put form into like this much of the panel, and then it'll just gradually fade away. And then you'll have to come back in with the English wheel and whatever and put your form into it. But then when you're English wheeling it, you won't be able to wheel right off the end of the panel. So you'll only be able to wheel up to about like here. And then what'll happen is you'll end up with an awkward transition going from here to here. So we want to avoid doing that on our panel work and save the awkward transitions for the editing department. Okay, so what I did here is I just got the rocker panel sections very roughly clamped into place. And all I'm doing that for is just so I can get a rough idea of the front to back measurement. So you can see I left these panels a little bit longer than what I needed so that they overlap. So now I'll just kind of fiddle around with this, get it positioned, and then I'll mark this, and then I can slice through here and do my butt weld, and then we'll have a fully seamless rocker panel. I got both of our rocker panel sections tack welded together here with the MIG. The downside to building these in two sections is it does take a bit of fiddling around to get everything lined up and straight this way and every which way. What I did is once I had the first side tacked together, I just took all the measurements off of that, transferred it, and then seamed this together. And now we're gonna TIG weld up the seam here. I just think the TIG weld finishes out a little bit nicer on stuff like this, so that's what we're gonna do. Well, there you go. There's two homemade van rocker panels all ready to be welded on. I do still have to round the corner here on this bottom flange, but I think I'll just do that once I get it welded on. So other than that, they're all ready to go. Their seams all smooth out there, so that's all good now. Again, you could, in theory, make these all in one piece, but these are over 5 feet long, so it's can get a bit tricky. So we just spliced them together in the middle there, made it a little easier for forming this. I've got the passenger side ready to go on, but on the driver's side, I'm gonna have to get this all welded up here and knock out this big dent here. So we've got a bit of work before we can put this side on. So the passenger side's all ready to go. We got it all treated and cleaned up and painted. Didn't bother grinding any of the welds down on this because they won't be seen, obviously, kind of a waste of time. We just want it to be strong, so I think it'll be better than a rust hole anyways. And we have to splice, trim this up and get it all trimmed and ready to go. But other than that, I'd like to get this side welded on tonight, so that's what we're going to get started on. I don't know if we're going to film that, but cause it's going to be just a bunch of boring welding, but it has to get done one way or the other. Okay, just to prove that the future isn't completely hopeless, at least not in my garage, I went ahead and welded the rocker panel on this side. So there's the finished product there. I didn't film any of this process because it's pretty boring. It's just a lot of welding, but I figured I'd end the video off on a bit of a high note and show that the panels are starting to go on the van here. Still got a long ways to go, but it's always nice to see fresh metal instead of holes. So I think we achieved our goal there. Not sure what the next panel I'll build will be, whether we build this wheel arch or we start on this. I guess this is also a rocker panel. I'm not sure what you'd call that, but still got a bunch of work to do before I can weld this side on. So we're going to cover some of that in the next video. And my goal is to get both rocker panels on this week. So I've got a lot of work to do. So if you enjoy watching me ruin my life, stay tuned for the next one. Hey! Wanted to announce that I burned a hole in my new jacket. I didn't even get it on film, so a little disappointing. Also, I wanted to give a big shout out to Mart over at Mart's Garage. He's got a YouTube channel and he's big into early Fords. Right now he's building a 1932 Ford sedan to race at Pendine. It's got a flathead in it and he's working on the engine right now. So if you like that kind of thing, make sure you go check out his channel. Anyways, thanks for watching.